Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome again to this week's Morning Coffee and a Thought, brought to you by Wings of Faith Ministries here in Sarnia, Ontario. It's good to be with you this morning. I've got my coffee here. I hope you have yours. Recently, I've been reading in the Old Testament book of Proverbs and came across one of my favorite chapters in the Old Testament of the Bible, the scriptures dealing in Proverbs chapter 8 with the subject of wisdom. What is wisdom? What was it considered to be? We want to look at that this morning, how we view it today and how they viewed it in the ancient culture in which the Old Testament was written. That's the subject we want to tackle this morning. First of all, before we do that, I want to remind you that Morning Coffee and a Thought can be viewed beginning on Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And on our Facebook page, it comes out at 8 a.m. on Sunday mornings. And we hope that you will join us, both on Facebook or on our YouTube channel. Also, we want to remind you, Journey of Insight. Al and I looking at the book of Hebrews, the foundations, truths of the Christian faith, as laid out in Hebrews 6, verses 1 and 2. Also, if you have a prayer request, if you want any information or you want to make a donation to our ministry, you can reach out to us at wingsoffaithministries.ca. All right, let's get back to our thought this morning. Proverbs chapter 8. The first thing we want to tackle is our view of wisdom in 2026 and how they would have viewed wisdom some 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. Today, we associate wisdom with intelligence, but back in the ancient cultures, they viewed it much differently. Wisdom was all about bringing order out of chaos. We see this back in the Bible writings in Genesis chapter 1. God bringing order out of chaos in the process of creation, the ordering of the cosmos. That's what wisdom was all about. And in their societies, people who were looked on as wise were those who brought laws, for instance, to bring order in societies. Religious practices, which brought devotion to the gods and also brought order and stability to a society. There was social etiquette, which helped in relationships with people. All these different factors brought order and stability out of chaos. And that's what the ancient world would have viewed as wisdom. So with that in mind, we want to go to Proverbs chapter 8. It is the chapter on wisdom. Now the chapter is 36 verses long, but it's divided into kind of subsections, different aspects of wisdom, which we want to look at. The first section, verses 1 to 5, deal with the availability of wisdom. The author tells us that in every part of life, in every circumstance we face, wisdom is always available. Now, how he describes it is in the city squares or at the city gate, where people meet and talk and make decisions. Wisdom would always be present. If you went to the city square, you'd have people teaching or talking about wisdom and matters dealing with the society. If you went to the city gate, that's where important decisions were made. And what the author is trying to tell you is that no matter where you are or what circumstance you were in, wisdom and the right decision was always available to you. In part 2 of the psalm, or or the proverb, in verses 6 to 13, the author talks about the motivation to have wisdom. He tells us that wisdom always has with it truth. It has rightness, the straight path, as opposed to crookedness or perversion or wickedness. Behind wisdom will always be truth and justice and the right thing to do. And that should be our motivation in life, to always find out what is true, what is straight, what is right, and what will bring justice in both our lives and in the lives around us. In the next section, verses 13 up to about 21, 22, he talks about the fruit of wisdom. If we're motivated to have wisdom and search for the right way, obviously there should be a result from it, a fruit. And the author tells us that the fruit of wisdom is favor with God and people, a good reputation, a good name. Why? Because we're making right decisions. He tells us that kings rule by wisdom. Rulers, heads of state, rule with wisdom. It's an empowering force. Making right decisions gives you empowerment, and it brings with it prosperity, along with that good name that I just mentioned. It gives us favor with the people around us and, of course, with God, making right choices. And so we have availability of wisdom. We have the motivation to have wisdom, to make the right decisions. We have the fruit of wisdom, empowerment, confidence, good name, a good reputation, prosperity. Then he goes into the origins of wisdom. And the author tells us that before this earth was ever put in its order, wisdom was with God. Wisdom has always been there with God and was involved in the creation process, the ordering of the cosmos. The author will point out that wisdom says, I was there, I saw it happen, I was involved with it. The involvement of making the mountains, making seas, making land, life here on earth. Wisdom was involved in all of it, the ordering of creation. And so wisdom was here long before we were, or long before this planet was here. And yet it was involved in the creative process. Finally and lastly, in summary, the author is going to tell us that although wisdom is available, wisdom is highly regarded to have, wisdom brings good fruit and results, wisdom has been here forever, but finally he makes his last call. And that is, although wisdom is available, we as believers in Christ have to listen to it. Although wisdom's always there, the right choice is always there with us and calls out to us, we have to have ears to hear it, and then to make the decision to follow wisdom's call. No matter what we face in life, people, wisdom will always be there. That's the promise of Proverbs 8. It's in the marketplace. It's at the city gate. It's at the crossroads. It's always in front of us. It's always calling out to us. And we know the results will be good. We know it'll always lead us in truthful and prosperous ways. But we still have to listen to it. In the New Testament, Paul would call this being led by the Spirit. Getting up in the morning and praying that Christ leads us in our daily activities. Life is all about relationships and making right decisions. And we know from Proverbs 8, the right decision is always there. It's always available to us. Being led by the Spirit of God is always there, But we have to decide to listen to the Spirit and follow the Spirit. Following Christ, being led by his Spirit, is the way. The fear of God and the respect for God, and knowing that God will always lead us in the right way. But we have to be able to listen and then to follow the path that he's laid out for us. Yes, it's true. Life is about two things: relationships and decision making. And Jesus Christ is involved in both areas of our lives, in these areas. And it would be our desire to follow the Spirit of God and to be led in wise, prudent ways, because that's what's going to bring both favor in our lives with both God and those around us. Let's all strive to be wise and prudent people. Listen, enjoy your coffee this morning, and we'll talk to you again next week.